Welcome on in, everyone. Today we're doing an Armored Core 6 review, and I just want to preface it with I'm a big Armored Core fan. I bought a PS2 way back in the day just because I wanted to play Armored Core 2. So I'm a little biased, but I will give critiques when I can. First off, the gameplay is about 90% exactly like I hoped it would be. This is the kind of game where the camera is going to be your hardest part to learn, but also a main mechanic of the game. When you first learn to drive a car, it feels big and clunky, and you think really hard about what you want the vehicle to do. Eventually it becomes second nature, but having to control the camera really feels like a rewarding mechanic when you finally master it. Other than that, the movements feel quick and snappy, which is phenomenal. You do tend to slide a bit more than you think you will, and when you're picking up the game, it's very difficult to learn to land on a specific small platform. You end up getting the hang of it relatively quickly and learn that staying in motion from sliding is the easiest way to keep dodging stuff. Lastly, when it comes to gameplay, at its core, pun intended, is the heavy, and I mean heavy, customization options available to you. A large plethora of weapons, body parts, and internal pieces can be very overwhelming. With the largest category of items being weapons, there are two hugely important things to note about your AC customization. The first is that each weapon, you can press a button to display a video showing exactly what the weapon does with its regular attack as well as its charge attack, so you can get an idea of what each weapon does before having to go into combat to use them. The second is that when you want to try a new build, you can sell any parts you have for the exact same price that you bought them. So if you hit a roadblock, you can just hawk all your shit and buy a bunch of brand new pieces to try again. The cons about the gameplay though, it's extremely challenging. I know it's a From Software game, so you should be expecting it to be hard, but Armored Core 6 is hard in a way that doesn't feel rewarding sometimes. You don't have invincible rolls or parries like you do in the Dark Souls or Elden Ring, and a lot of the damage that bosses throw at you just feels unavoidable. They do have a couple tips in the game that will tell you about things like reloading all your weapons just before you stagger an enemy, so you can unleash everything at once for max damage, but those tips are also few and far between. Speaking of weapons, the explosions from some of the missiles and rockets is incredibly thick and will prevent you from seeing incoming attacks very frequently. Not being able to see the next 40 missiles coming at me is very frustrating, but the explosions do go away fairly quickly, so it's something I can live with. Lastly, the difficulty of the bosses in many situations just feels completely overtuned. Multiple times I found myself getting stun locked, going from 90% health to 0, and just banging my head against a wall to get past a boss, even when it has very easily discernible attacks. It just takes one mistake and your boss run can be ended. Overall, for gameplay, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Even with the flaws, I absolutely love the feeling of piloting and customizing the mech. It feels fantastic in my hands, and I can't wait to get back in the pilot seat each day when I wake up to play more Armored Core 6. Next, let's talk about the artistic things in the game, starting with graphics. The particle effects are absolutely beautiful. I was running the game on max settings with the 3070 and had no graphical glitches throughout my entire run of the game. I love the setting and the graphical fidelity approached by each of the levels as well. Even some of the smaller inconsequential parts of the level have really cool textures, hidden alleys, and fun little nooks that look like they belong in each facility. Lastly, when you consider the size of a mech in real life, the level designers took this and really made it feel like a world that was lived in. In each level there's a giant wall you need to scale or a huge ramp you need to go down, but they take the time to add little cars or stairwells and many similar things all over the place for the people who should live in that world, something that's the actual size of them. It's a small touch, but it really makes it feel like the developers care about their world. Even if I'm going to blow up 50 different cars just by walking down the street, they're there, it's fun. It's an extra thing that didn't need to be there, and it's incredible. So, for graphics, I give it a perfect 10 out of 10. I have no complaints about anything, and this is exactly the image I had in my head for what a perfect Armored Core game looks like. Sound design is up next, and I'm a little torn on it. The music in the game is okay. There aren't really many moments that jump out at me and make me realize there's even a music track going on. That said, none of the music feels out of place. It's balanced well with each zone and helps give the level an appropriate atmosphere. That being said, I wish there were a couple times when I run into a boss fight and they just hit me with the biggest drop in EDM history. So while none of the music in particular is very memorable to me, the sound design for the voice actors, special effects, and how they pair it all up is done incredibly well. There's one part in particular when I was fighting a mech called Iceworm, when they warn you a big attack is incoming and suddenly all the comms go silent. You could hear a pin drop. The perfect atmosphere for silence can really go a long way, and the devs used it magnificently. I won't spoil what happens, but it's been my only true moment in the atmosphere of the game that really just makes me sit back, stare in awe, and claimed, holy shit. And it just genuinely gave me goosebumps. So overall, I'd give sound design a 9 out of 10. Tons of really cool sound effects for each weapon and setting, but I wish the music just went a little harder in boss fights. But other than that, don't really have any complaints. So these things lead me to the final rating I give Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, a 9.5 out of 10. For those curious, I don't think it feels like a Dark Soul in any aspect except for the readability of moves on boss fights. Every aspect of the game tends to blend together really well, which is how I ended up with a slightly higher rating than just 9, 10, 9 that I gave the game earlier in the video. It's been one of my favorite games of the year, and I see myself sinking countless hours into replaying this to get all the endings. If you're an Armored Core fan, you need this game. If you're a Dark Souls fan, you could probably do without it if you don't like mechs. It really goes hard on the mech piloting fantasy, and if the thought of that doesn't appeal to you, this game will probably push you to hate it more than loving the difficulty it brings. If you end up playing the game, please leave your thoughts and comments below. I would love to hear from you and learn what your favorite weapons and builds are in the game. I'm experimenting with a lot of stuff, and I want to put some videos out covering a few different builds, things I've used, and just experiment with ones other players send me as well. So please leave some love, and y'all, take it easy.